Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Hope Presbyterian Church. Welcome to Hope for Healing, this mental health conference for today. My name is Mike Geiler, and I serve here at Hope as the pastor. It's my privilege to be in that role. So we're really glad that you are choosing to spend your morning with us. This is very important. So as you know, this is a free mental health conference. We want to provide a place for conversations. We want to provide a place for resources, for you to hear some things, for you to learn, for you to interact with some professionals around mental health and mental well-being. So I think it's great that you've chosen to be here, and for all of our speakers and our organization representatives that have chosen to be here too. This is going to be a great morning. So we believe that mental health matters. The wholeness of people includes their minds, bodies, and spirits, and so we care for all of that. And we know that you might have chosen to be here for any number of reasons. You might want to learn. You might have someone that you know who is struggling, or maybe you are struggling, and you want to get some support and get some encouragement. And so whatever brings you here today, we want you to know that we care, and that we want you to know that you are not alone, and that there is hope. And we hope that you feel that today. So a couple of things before we begin in the way of logistics. We've got restrooms outside both sets of doors here in the sanctuary in that kind of center hallway. There's also a set of restrooms in the gym where our organization tables, info tables are set up, and that's where we'll have lunch later on as well. But if you haven't had a chance to check out the gym, we encourage that you do that. That's where our info tables are. We've got Joe on the go. Many of you have made use of that already, which is great. We've got some treats in there. There's some gluten-free stuff in there as well, if that's your preference. And then, of course, later on, after both of our sessions are done today, we'll have lunch in the gym as well. That's going to be catered by Olive Garden. Hooray! That will be pasta and breadsticks and salad. There'll be gluten-free pasta as well. And we really hope that you will make use of the vast information that's available here, the resources that are available, our professionals that are here today. We want this to be of great benefit for you. So please make use of that. There are knowledgeable people. Ask questions of them. Get into conversations with them. That's why they're here. Browse through their information. Take the information that's available to you to take for free and share that with people that you know. So we want this to be a benefit to you. Our website at Hope is hpcomaha.org, and we have a page on our website of mental health resources as well. So if you go to our website, hpcomaha.org/resources, there will be some information there as well that we can post, and some follow-up stuff about this conference also that we'll post there later. So I want to talk about a couple of minutes before we get going with our first session of what's happening today here in the room. So today we will have two main sessions. Both of them will be here in the sanctuary in this room. The first session that we'll have, just a couple of moments, will be with Kyler Erickson. He's our first keynote speaker, and I'll introduce Kyler in just a moment. But I'm looking forward to hearing his story, and I know that you are as well. After Kyler's session, we'll have a break. And then our second session will be back in this room, and we're going to have a panel of professionals in the mental health field that we're going to ask some questions of, and we're going to get their perspectives on the ways that they provide support. So anything from being in the emergency room to therapy sessions, peer support groups, and all those kinds of things. We'll be able to speak to that during that session. So you noticed as you came in the room that we're handing out little note cards and a pencil for you. If you don't have a note card and a pencil, we want you to have one. You can get some at the back of the sanctuary here toward these entry doors. And the reason we want you to have that is that you're going to have a chance to write down on those note cards a question that you have in regard to mental health. And then during the break, after Kyler's session, we're going to collect those cards, and we're going to sort through them, and then we're going to pick out some of your questions to also ask our panelists in session 2. Okay, so you can be thinking about that during the first session or during the break. We're going to hand those in as you leave during break time after Kyler's first session, and then we'll get going with the second session about 10:30 in here, okay? So are we ready to get started this morning? All right. Okay. So our keynote speaker this morning is Kyler Erickson. Kyler is a professional speaker, a director of suicide prevention. He's an ESPN analyst, former two-time captain of UNO men's basketball team. He has been featured in the New York Times, ABC News, USA Today, and Yahoo Sports, and he's a member of the All-State Good Works team. That's one of the most prestigious awards in college basketball, and he has been traveling around the country for the past several years telling his story and dedicating his life to one simple mission, and that is to help as many people as he can. So won't you please help me welcome today Kyler Erickson.
Thank you so much, and first off, really just want to shout out everyone who made today happen. I know it was a long time coming for Lori and her team, and Abby and the church for having us. I also always like to call out any first responders in here, anyone who has served or defended the greatest country in the world, which is the United States. I think sometimes I take for granted living in the most free country, and so if we could, can we give it up for all of those in here today? Now, I've got to be honest with you. I did go to Papillion Days last night, okay? And I had 7 fried Oreos, all right? Now, 7. Now, before you judge me, okay, this is what happened. My wife and I have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. So we order, the 2 orders of fried Oreos. They come in packs of 4, so we get 8. Well, our 2-year-old eats about half of one, and then she runs off and goes to the rides. So my wife follows her, and now I'm just staring at these 7.5 fried Oreos, and I'm like, I'm not a quitter, And I don't think any of us in here are quitters. So if you were in the same predicament, you would eat them. And so I was staring at them, and it took like 2 minutes, and I finished them all. And I don't think it was something I'm proud of, because when I got done with it, I was pretty sick, and not in a good way. I was seriously ill. But that's why I had to wear the jacket, so you couldn't see my belly here today. But again, so excited to be here. And most of the time I'm in front of thousands of middle schoolers and high schoolers, so it's a much better crowd, I think, or at least less likely to throw things at me, which, is always good. But we'll see. The jury's still out on that one. Well, a couple things here that I really want to accomplish. And by the way, a big weekend in Omaha. We've got the College World Series Championship. Also, Toy Story 5 came out yesterday. Did anyone go see it yet? No one. Okay, I was going to ask. The only reason I grew up with Toy Story, our kids love it, but the movie I've seen more than any of the Toy Stories is Tangled. Anyone seen Tangled? Great movie. If my daughter could watch that 24 hours a day, she would. And so if I had to, if my life was on the line and I had to sing Tangled songs for an hour, I could probably do it up here. Now, I don't think it'd be beneficial or fun for anyone, but if push came to shove, I could probably make it happen. Well, really quick here, and the goal of today, which I think all of us are in here for the same reason, is we're trying to dive in and solve this issue of mental health. Or, in my opinion, what I've seen be the biggest problem is the increased suicide rates among our youth. And there's a lot of problems, and so that's the one I've sort of put my foot in the ground and said, I'm going to dedicate my life towards tackling. And so that's sort of what my perspective is based on. And I don't know if we can get the slide up there oh, you already got it. Look at that. If you can go to the next one real quick. I've got it up here on the screen, and this is data from the last decade. When you look at data, you always want to see it from a clear perspective. 10 years of data, it may be a little small, but up there, the biggest jump in suicide rates is from age group 18 to 25. 18 to 25. When I first started doing this, it was 13 years ago, I would really only do high schools. It was like middle school is too young to talk about PTSD and depression. Well, I've recently done more and more middle schools. I've even gotten calls from elementary schools. I mean, it's sickening. And I feel sort of as a society, to nobody's fault. It's just like we've accepted these, and it's like, yeah, that's just how it is. And to me, it's like, well, what can we do on a daily basis as humans, as therapists, as counselors? What can we do to decrease those rates? But I also wanted to look at what in the world is going on. 17% jump. What happened? Where'd we go wrong? And so I've spent my life sort of diving into those exact issues. And so, the next question is like, well, what gives you the right to speak on this? And I will say, for the last 13 years, I've traveled across the country, 46 out of 50 states, hundreds of thousands of students. Most of those students, and because of my keynote, my one rule when I go to these schools is I will stay as long as kids want to talk. My record is 12 hours inside of a school. 12 hours. And thank you. And it's like, to me, it's this question of when I get to the end of my life, and it's the same with you're in here for a reason. It's like, will I be proud of the life that I lived? And so everything that I do is sort of directed on that. But as I've gone these last couple years, and for a couple of those years when I first started out, I was one of the 5 most requested youth speakers in the United States. And so the amount of schools, the hundreds of thousands of students that I've interacted with, I have had conversations nearly every single school where students are crying and they have a plan to end their life. And so we look around and we're like, oh, how can this happen? What caused this? What could be? Well, I want to dive into those issues because I think it's a responsibility for all of us to sort of tackle. And let's look at the first one and the story that I hear every single school that I go to. My parents are divorced. And that is not a shot on any divorced parent. My parents are divorced. But what happens then is these kids, their lives really are in jeopardy and they get wrecked more than anyone. And so you look at the rates, 50, 55%, they're increasing. And so that puts the kids' lives really in jeopardy, and they sort of choose between both parents. When I go to these rural schools, they don't have a lot of money. Now, money is a big stressor. Now they can't get clothes to go to school in because they don't have money. Now kids make fun of them. And it's this spiral where they just feel like, okay, it's better to end my life. And so the divorce rate, I also think, and this is not a political opinion, COVID did our kids in worse than anything we could have ever imagined. And that is not to say that COVID's not real, but it is to say when you put kids at home for a couple years, you give them no social interaction, you give them no friends, no family, you're not supposed to visit your family member in the hospital. Well, these kids, now they've been derived of years of some of the most important years of their lives, they've just been at home. It's not how it was designed to be. And so the isolation piece of COVID did so much harm to our kids. And again, I do not mean that politically at all. I have no horse in the race besides decreasing the rates that we see on the screen. And the very last one that really two others that I can think of, and I'm sure you would agree. The third one would be social media. And I know there's good on social media. I know there's positive accounts. I know if you use it right, it can be helpful. I know you can get your message out for very informative, for very inspirational people. For the rest of them, what has social media become? You got it. It's a highlight reel. And if your life isn't that highlight reel, well, now you should think less of yourself. If you're not on vacation every day, if you don't have new shoes, if you don't have the best new device, these kids, their entire worth is now tied up in likes and comments. And again, I use social media. I'm not saying I'm this big anti-social media guy and never use it and it's horrible. But when you look at the statistics as a net gain or a net loss, social media has been a net loss, especially for our youth. The very last item, which sort of goes along with COVID, but it's just pure isolation for our kids. It is less community. It is less family dinners. It is less being together outside in nature. It's just go, go, go. And so to these kids, it just, all of these things added together is, in my opinion, what has caused these rates to increase. I saw a lot of head nods, and so I don't always just like to present the problem, but I really want to bring a solution, and that's what I hope today's about. And the best solution on planet Earth that I can ever think of, if you go to the next screen, is simply this. It's just hope. And for all of us in here, I'd encourage you to look this up, this study. Now, it is controversial, I'll say, at that. But if you want to write this down, it's Kurt Richter is his name. And this was in the 1950s. He's a longtime professor at Johns Hopkins University, Kurt Richter. Now, the reason this is, I'll say, controversial is he took rats, okay, and you may ask, well, what do rats and humans have in common? Well, a lot of us know some humans who are kind of ratty, like, and it may be your family members, and so they'll always study rats when they're trying to see how humans would respond, because in a lot of ways they're very similar. But what Kurt Richter did is he took these first set of 10 rats, and these rats, he put each one in a cup of water to see how long they could swim, see how long they could survive in the cup of water. And this is where the controversial part comes in play. And if Pete is here, I did not do these studies. I read about the studies. So let's clear that up. But the first 10 rats sat in the cup of water for 5 minutes. Some lasted about 10 minutes, and then they would drown. So what Kurt Richter did, he took this next 10 set of rats, and he put them in the cup of water, and when they were about to drown, he would pick them up. So right about the 5-10 minute mark, he would pick the rat up, he would dry it off, he would hold it for a couple minutes, and then he'd put the rat back in the cup. Does anyone know how long that rat swam next time? Has anyone heard this study before? No? 3 days. 3 days. And go home, study that. But 3 days because of what? Hope. That's it. Rat didn't know anything else. But the rat had this idea that he was going to, or she was going to get saved, was going to get pulled out of that water. And when you've got that glimmer of hope, now you're going to fight. And they fought for 3 days. Incredible, incredible statistic. And the other one that comes to mind is, if you want to look it up, is a Canadian psychologist by the name of Bruce Alexander. Well, Bruce Alexander, this was the 1970s, and it's pretty controversial as well, I would say. But here's what they did. They took the first set of rats. Again, we all know some ratty humans. And they put them in a small cage with regular water. You know this one? And then water infused with cocaine. Now, relax, everyone, relax. And so what happened? Well, in the small cage with the rat by itself, water and cocaine water got addicted to the cocaine water right away. Died. Near instantly. So, well, what does that say? Rats love cocaine. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? So the next study, they put the rat in a much larger cage with things to climb on, toys, things to do. It could go up, it could go down. There were stairs, they could explore. There was food, there was water, there was cocaine water. What do you think happened? Explored. Not once did the rat get addicted to the cocaine water. So what does that, what do you mean? Well, we've got to give these kids and us as humans a encouraging, supportive, uplifting environment so that they don't choose the things that are bad. And so many times I'll get questions, and I tell you, there was 2 days last month that I didn't get a DM from someone across the country telling me their story, asking me what they can do to help, how we can improve these numbers. I get these from every school I've ever been for, and it's sort of, my wife's like, oh, you got to respond to these. Like, it's nonstop. And the question that always comes up is, what can we do about this? It's like, well, what are you speaking to people? What are you telling them? What are you saying? Because all of us in here have an insane amount of power if we would use that to speak life into people, and especially into kids. And this is, if you take nothing else from today, this next slide is the whole ball game when it comes to youth. What you tell them they are, they become. There may be no bigger statement in regards to youth suicide rates than having encouraging, loving role models who tell them what they are. What are they? They're loved. They're talented. They are incredibly gifted. And depending what you believe, the Lord Jesus built them perfectly based off what he thought was best and knows the number of hairs on their head. And so many times, these kids aren't told this. They're not told any of this. We put them in a box and say, you know, you need to pass this class, you need to go to college, you need to get a perfect grade, to have the perfect job, you need to have a perfect life. And it's not what they want. And it's not what a lot of us want. I mean, think back to what we wanted to be when we were kids. Right? Some of us are. For me, it was like I always got in trouble talking in school, and I couldn't pay attention. And it was like, well, this is perfect, you know? And so here is the story that I always come back to this because, again, I think these are actions that all of us can take in this room. But I was speaking at Fort Dodge High School, Fort Dodge, Iowa. If anyone has been there, small little, you've been there. Are you from there? Oh, there we go. Well, Fort Dodge, the Dodgers. This was 7 or 8 years ago. There's this kid that comes up right after I'm done speaking, and he is bawling his eyes out. Now, this happens quite often, and the way that I've learned to handle it, and all of us in here are probably the same way, but first you got to let them get it all out, most importantly. Second, oftentimes it's not responding as much, which is exactly what they need. They just want someone to listen that they can trust and that they know has been in the same spot as them. And so this kid starts telling me he doesn't have either parent around. He lives with his aunt. Well, his aunt is always working. She's not home. He's had no role model, no support. He doesn't want to go to a counselor at school because he doesn't want to be seen as that kid. He doesn't talk to his teachers or his assistant principals, administrators, because he's not doing his homework as much, and he's always in trouble. And he's telling me all these things, and he says he doesn't want to live anymore. And so first, I cry with him, I hug him, and I just listen. But at the end of this conversation, I could tell that this kid had been beaten up enough that he doesn't need to go back through all his issues. He doesn't need to rehearse him, and I don't need to give him advice. What I need to do is build him up to be the kid that he can be. And so I just look at him, and I tell him these couple things. I just say, look, I'm so sorry for what you've been through. I said, you are important, you're loved, you matter. But then I ask him, his name's Joe, and he's allowed me to tell this story. But I say, Joe, what's something that really excites you? What do you go to bed thinking about? What do you wake up thinking about? He says, well, I've always loved, like, Nike basketball shoes. I say, okay. I say, Joe, I'll tell you this. If you promise me that you'll go see the school counselor once a week for the rest of your high school career, and that you'll find a counselor after school, I said, you pick any shoes you want, and I'll send them here tomorrow. So, sure enough, he picks out these nice red Air Jordans, gets sent them tomorrow, and that same kid, he ends up going to Iowa Central, 2-year degree. I had spoken at some schools in Oregon. I asked if there was anything we could do. That kid moves to Beaverton, Oregon, because that's where the Nike headquarters is. and is currently full-time at Nike. What do we have that we can, what have we been given that we can use to help others? That's the question. I don't have all the money in the world. It's not like, but I've got $70 to spend on a kid's pair of shoes so that he now has hope for the future. That's all he needed. Shoes, so that he can wake up tomorrow excited to put his shoes on. He can go to school and put his shoes on, show his friends how cool those shoes are, because to him that signifies his life is not all horrible. And he can take these shoes and he can run faster and he can jump and he can make something of his life. And so many times I think we get so focused on the wrong things in life. And it's like, what wakes you up? That's it. What do you get excited about? And I just feel so often that we put them in this box to do these perfect things when in reality it's like, what do you want to do? You tell me. And let's build a life around that. Let's put some sort of goal up on the stage that we can chase. And you'll actually see this a lot in interviews with pro athletes. If any of us are sports fans in here, they win the championship, and so many of them are like, this actually isn't what I thought it would feel like. I don't know. I thought it would be more. That's because it's all about the chase. It's all about the climb uphill towards a better us. And so for each kid, it looks different. Well, I want to dive into sort of set the groundwork, and that's really what I have tried to dedicate my life to, is exactly that. But I want to go back to where in the world I came from and what got me to this point. And I will be honest, in elementary school, we had a talent show. Did you all do talent shows growing up? Yeah. Well, elementary school, we had a talent show, and for whatever reason, I thought it'd be funny to dress up as a girl and sing I Feel Like a Woman by Shania Twain. Can you put that up there? Look at that. Yeah, we know I'm going out tonight, I'm feeling all right. That was the first time I was ever on stage, and it was horrible. I will tell you that. And I can't sing, so they cut me off right away. Yeah, brutal. But I knew right then, it's like, well, I've got to be talented in other ways, I hope, because if that's all I am, that's something. So, but it was 108th and Q, and if any of us remember, 108th and Q, there used to be a Taco Bell Pizza Hut. Anyone remember those over there? You do? Yeah. So I'll tell kids nowadays, I'm like, dude, we used to go to Taco Bell Pizza Hut, and they think I'm lying. I'm like, no, you could order pizza at Taco Bell or tacos at Pizza Hut. And maybe that's what we're missing, is just the Taco Bell Pizza Huts. Maybe that's the whole problem in the world today. So, middle school comes around and still a weird, awkward kid, but I went to Millard Central and actually just spoke there a couple months ago. First time I had been back in 20 years. And then high school comes around, and I go to Millard South. Phenomenal school, of course, right down the street, some of the best people I've ever met. And the one thing that I knew right away is I'm very short, very unathletic. Sports may not be the game for me. But I loved basketball. And talking about what wakes you up, what excites you, was always basketball for me. And we didn't have a ton of money growing up. My mom, my sister, my brother, and I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, Murfield Apartments, 108th and Q, and absolutely loved it. I mean, this was a true joy, and I mean that. I was so happy to have a roof over my head, and we had food on the table, and it was a really good childhood. But freshman year, I was on our freshman team, didn't play, didn't start much. Sophomore year, much of the same. And then junior year comes around. I grew up a little bit, stayed in the weight room a ton, and we took Millard South to the state tournament for the first time in a decade. And yeah, and this was the first time I felt like maybe I'd actually done something, like this is pretty sweet. And so that propelled me really to senior year. All right, now senior year comes around. This is 2011. And when I think back on my high school career, I always envisioned Saved by the Bell. Do we have Saved by the Bell fans in the house? Yeah. Every morning it was on at like 6:30. Slater. I want to be like Zach Morris, AC Slater. I was trying to get Lisa Turtle and Kelly Kapowski. And I actually set, this is pretty weird of me, but I set our TV default. There's like this all-time Saved by the Bell channel on Samsung TVs, and I defaulted it on our TV. So every time we turn it on, it's Saved by the Bell. It's beautiful. If you're interested, I can find the channel and send it to you. So I forced my kids, like, watch this, all right? But I think of Saved by the Bell, and it really came true. This was 2011. In 2011, Millard South, our basketball team was ranked #1 in the state. I led the state of Nebraska in scoring, 21 points per game. Thank you. I can't play anymore. I'd have to stretch for probably 3 hours, okay? Was on prom royalty, homecoming royalty, and when I really think back to senior year, it was straight up Saved by the Bell. It felt like this was everything that I could ever dream of. My whole hope was in basketball and putting a ball through a hoop. And if this is really sad, but back then I thought if people look back on me and think of me as an athlete, then that would be the best thing to ever happen in my life. Really. And so senior year comes around and all this comes true. Well, everything changed in January of 2011. We had a basketball game the night before this, and I rolled my ankle really, really bad. And so I was in this boot, got put on crutches. Well, at the same time that our game was going on, we had a classmate, his name was Robert. Robert was driving his truck on the football field. Cookies, donuts, you name it. Well, we come back to school that next day, and Robert gets called down to our assistant principal's office, and she says, you can't drive your truck on the football field. We're going to suspend you for a couple weeks, send your homework home with you. Well, Robert didn't agree with this. He goes home, and he gets his father's gun. As he's on his way back to school, my ankle started to hurt really bad. I had this big boot, and I was in crutches for a couple weeks, but I asked for a pass down to our nurse's office. So as I crutched down to our nurse's office, and if you've ever been in Millard South, right in the middle there is the administrator, assistant principal, nurse's office, athletic director. They're all right in the middle of the school there. And so I crutch in and start to ice my ankle. And the room next door, Robert signs in, and he walks into our assistant principal's office, Dr. Vicki Casper. And that is when the shooting happened in 2011. So Dr. Casper loses her life, and a woman who I have looked up to my whole life, who had a chair at every basketball game that we played and was there, cared for us, loved us like her own children. Robert then heads to our principal's office. Our principal survives. And then Robert drives down the street and dies by suicide. If you could go to the next slide there. And this is when your world gets flipped upside down, you really find out who you are. And during the shooting, I was a couple feet away from what happened, just one wall away. I heard the worst screams, gunshots, noises you could ever imagine. I saw more than I would wish on my own worst enemy. And a couple administrators, assistant principals, and I There's a little tiny bathroom in the nurse's office where us 5 or 6 hid and called 911. And you look on news, SWAT team, helicopters, the whole 9 yards. Everywhere you look, it's Millard South. And as a 18-year-old kid, it's like, how do you even start? What do you even do? And so the next couple of days, as we're going to the candlelight vigils and the funeral, and we try to somehow cope as a school, there was always this question that I couldn't get out of my head. And that question was, if I didn't make it out of school that day, because Robert had actually fired a couple of just random rounds. If I didn't make it out of school that day, would I have been proud of the person I was? Did I think I really did anything for anyone in my life? And my answer that day, January 5th, 2011, was no. Like I had spent my whole life trying to be a jock, trying to put a ball through a hoop, trying to be this kid that people thought was cool. And I just told myself, God willing, however long I'm on this earth, I'm going to fight for something bigger. I'm going to live my life to try and impact as many people as I can. But if I get to the end of my life and people think of me as a basketball player, what a waste of a life. So I just made that pact right then and there. Well, the next couple months unfold, and I end up going to UNO, Nebraska-Omaha, and my first couple months there were some of the worst months of my life. Every single night, I would wake up, and I actually lived in a co-ed dorm room, so there was, of course, girls and guys, and I hear all sorts of noise, but every single night at 3 a.m., I would wake up, and I would replay the day of the shooting in my head. I would hear fireworks, and I would curl up into a ball. I would hear girls scream, and I would curl up into a ball. I was hospitalized twice with kidney stones because I wasn't drinking water. I wasn't eating. I was failing all of my classes. My life really was at the expense of post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. I couldn't function. The only thing that I could think of every single morning, every single night, was the shooting. That's it. I think there's a real stigma when it comes to a lot of this stuff. It's like, if you have a broken arm, that's fine. Go to the doctor. But if you have a broken brain, keep that to yourself. And so that's exactly what I did. I just held it all inside and didn't want to tell anyone what I was going through, didn't want to admit that I needed help, especially on a Division I basketball team, especially in front of my teammates, my coaches, my family. And I'll never forget a conversation I had with Coach Darren Hansen, a longtime coach at Omaha. But I walk in, this was after I was hospitalized, I was not eating, I was tiny. I walk into practice, and I just start bawling my eyes out. Trauma and grief just has a weird way of coming out of you, whether you want it to or not. I think we all know that. But I walk onto the practice floor, and I just start bawling my eyes out. And Coach Hansen pulls me into his office and gives me a hug, but he had this response that I'll never forget, and I think is so real and raw for all of us in here. And very simply, he said, Kyler, none of us are defined by what happens to us. We're defined by what we do next. We're defined by what we do next. We've all seen Good Will Hunting. He says, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And so for me, this was the first time it's like, maybe I can use this story to get the word out about others who are holding things inside. maybe I can use this to make a difference in the world. And that was the very first time that I started telling my story. But before that, and if you want to go to the next slide there, thanks so much. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and depression, and went through what I would say completely changed my life forever, EMDR. And if you all remember the shooting at Von Mar, the same therapist who dealt with those survivors and those who witnessed that shooting, her name was Deb Jones. She actually passed away a couple years ago. God bless her. But she dealt with all the Von Mar survivors and all of us from Millard South that were close. And what EMDR does, if any of us aren't familiar, and it is one of the highest success rates, about 87%, especially those who serve overseas and come back. This can be life-changing. But what EMDR, at least the way it worked for me, first off, you tell your story almost every single day, the most vivid parts of it. And I know it's small, maybe small on the screen there, and I can always send this out too, but the very first thing is to identify the issues and review your history, right? Because what triggers the PTSD, the depression? For me, it was the gunshots and the screams, and those were the two worst ones. And so then you sort of create this space in the room with the therapist, which then leads to what we call identified disturbing events and triggers. And also, we used what's up there, bilateral simulation, which we had this board, sort of this little, like almost a TV kind of thing. And there would be different movements with the waves on it. And while you're watching this board and telling your story, what happens is that it moves my memory of the shooting from the right side of the brain to the left so that it's no longer attached with emotions. Absolutely crazy. And it took a long time. It was no easy feat. For me, it was 4 months of going twice a week. And the really crazy part about this, the beautiful part about it, but after an hour of therapy, they told me your brain would be ready for a night's sleep. And it was pretty accurate. That's how taxing it was. But EMDR, counseling, therapy, I wouldn't be here without it. I would not be here without it. And after going through this was about 4 or 5 months of therapy, and I took completely off school, completely off of basketball, and just focused on my mental health. I came back and was so ready to take this story and to tell others that it's okay not to be okay, and that it's not your fault, and that we can take what has happened to us and make something good out of it. And this is the same conversation when I'm talking to so many of these crying youth. It's like, look, we can use this as a way to get your story out, to help others who are in the same boat. And that in itself is therapy for you. And that in itself makes the suffering a little bit more bearable. And so that's exactly what I wanted to do. If you go to the next slide, I just want to summarize this point, is none of us are defined by what happens to us. We're defined by what we do next. And so I ended up playing, of course, at UNO for 4 years, won several national awards. And right after I was done, I actually joined a tour. If anyone knows Mike Smith from Lincoln, started the skate park and big nonprofit. He's an awesome guy, one of my best friends. Him and I went on this tour for a couple years all across the country, sponsored by Vans and Jostens, and did a ton of really cool work. And we met this principal on the tour that had this really cool story, which is the next video that will play. But what had happened is we wanted to put ourselves in situations and build relationships with people that if they needed something, they would come to us. I think that's the whole goal for any of us in here, is to be close enough with people so that if they need things, they will come to you. And he's got a really cool story, which we'll play. It's just about a minute long, but we'd love if we could get that playing.
We have a culinary arts teacher, has the biggest heart, loves kids, loves what she does. She recognized a student having a rough day one day. She went over, asked them if there's anything she could do to help, gave them a hug, and said, if you ever need anything, you know where I'm at. About 3 weeks later, she found a letter on her desk from this student saying, that day I was seriously contemplating going home and committing suicide because of what you did for me that day. I thought better and had more to live for. And that's what Renaissance Community is about. It's about culture, climate, and it's about relationships, providing hope and opportunity. And that's what we do and need to do on a daily basis.
Awesome. That's the goal. That's it. Right there. That's it. We'll have a couple last things here and one last video, but last year, actually, if anyone knows Jordan Peterson, famous psychologist from Canada and also a little bit political, but as far as his beliefs, I had a really cool opportunity to interview him and meet him, and he's done some phenomenal work with young people. And this next slide here is just a clip from that, which I think brings such a good point. Like, when we're looking for what's going on in people's lives, we've got to look at everything. Like, it's not just go to therapy. It's like, what's your home life look like? What time are you waking up? Because your circadian rhythms dictate your mood. Are you waking up at the same time every day? What your parents are around? How did you grow up? Do you work out? We need all these answers to be able to actually identify and meet these kids and adults where they're at. But he said you can't out-therapy a broken system. We need community, real food, time in nature, learning from elders, solving a problem that needs fixing, climbing to a goal. Our stories give hope. We should share them. It's up to us, and I love our chances. This is such a beautiful way to put it. It's like, if we can get our kids to believe this, that you can build a life that you're proud of, that you can solve a problem that you're passionate about, whether that's making shoes in Beaverton, Oregon, whether that's trying to decrease the suicide rates, whether you love making food and you want to be the world's best chef. But we can build a life that you can be proud of, and you can wake up excited, and we can give hope. And that's where we need to push our kids. Like, that's it. Go there. And all of us in here have resources. We have things that we can offer. It's just hard to see when you're young and you've got a horrible home life, and no one's ever told you this before. I also think the one thing that all of us in here have is a story, you know? And it's the one thing that nobody can ever take away. It's the one thing that nobody can say, that didn't happen. That's not true. And I think for all of us, there's so many people who would benefit from that. And so the only reason I show this next video, it's like I just decided one day that I've got to get the word out to help as many people as I can and let them know, like, they're not alone in their struggles. And it just started with a quick little YouTube video. KTV was over at my house that night. KMTV was over at my house that next day. But take a look at this next clip, and then we'll wrap up right thereafter.
Calling it a rare situation, Erickson suffered from the effects of PTSD.
Court Erickson, wide open behind the arc, now drives off the glass and gone, and he'll have a chance to complete the three-point play.
Post-traumatic stress disorder. Has a website. He's really out talking to people.
I couldn't sit on the couch any longer and know that I have a story to tell and not do anything about it.
Erickson, three, left wing, good!
Now his message is going national. Just this week, he's been featured in Yahoo Sports, ABC News, The New York Times, and ESPN.
We sit down with UNO basketball player Kyler Erickson.
Kyler
Erickson has overcome PTSD and depression, all as a standout basketball player at UNO.
The following year, what would you like to do in the future with what you're doing?
Yeah, so if I could, I'd like to turn it into a full-time thing. It's really just me telling my story of mental illness and hope, and telling people that it's okay not to be okay.
Please help me welcome Mr. Kyler Erickson.
Let's welcome Kyler Erickson. Pleasure to see you, Kyler Erickson.
Erickson tells us he hopes to make this a tour a regular full-time job of his, and now his main goal, he says, to help as many people as possible.
So what are you doing with yourself besides the TV stuff?
Yeah, so I do quite a bit of public speaking. So I travel the country telling my story, and I've been on your show before. Was in a dogfight with PTSD and depression for several years. And now I just tell my story and tell especially kids that life is hard, but it's much harder when you hold everything inside. And so if you need a counselor, if you're depressed, suicidal, anxiety, whatever it may be, please get the help you need, because you're worth it and your life matters. So
Therapy is something I think a lot of us, and myself, not easy to go talk to somebody, but that's one of the first steps.
yeah, it's certainly not easy, and there's a real stigma with it too. And the stigma says if you have a broken arm, that's fine, go to the doctor, but if you have a broken brain, keep that to yourself. And so there's a real stigma, and so really through telling my story, the message is that you're worth the help, and so please go see a counselor or therapist. I did for 6 months, took completely off school and basketball, and it changed my life. And so if you're listening and that's you, please go do it, because you're worth it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome inside Baxter Arena. I'm John Schreiner, my partner tonight, Kyler Erickson. And Kyler,
Me back here courtside with former Mav Kyler Erickson. I'm Donnie Barnes. Let's talk about how this went.
More time with Kyler Erickson. I'm Donnie Barnes, and Kyler Omaha.
Need. I think what's so wrong is we have this statistic that 1 in 5 people deal with mental health disorders, when in reality it's all 5 of us. It's 5 out of 5. We're going through the divorce of our parents. Maybe it's the loss of a family member, a broken relationship. But when we say it's 1 of 5, it's like, well, then people don't want to say I'm that one. And that stops them from getting help and therapy. And so the message is, look, we are all going through something. Life is hard for a lot of us. It does get better. And the more that we share our stories, the more that we open up and listen and rely on other people, life is a game that's much easier when we go through it together.
Yeah, you were so right on that, Kyler.
And there it is. I think that's what our stories can do. That's what all of us in here have, is a story. And I just sort of want to do a very, very quick activity to wrap this up. If we could all stand up really quick. This sort of demonstrates to me mental health. So if you can, with your left hand, make a square. We're going to see if you all paid attention to geometry or not. Square. Good job. Now left hand down. Right hand, triangle. Okay, right hand down. Now same time, both hands, square and triangle. Can anyone do it? I love it. So that to me is mental health, right? It's like when things get dicey, we meet at you've got things that come up, things that happen. It's like we can't think as clearly. And so if you or anyone you know is ever in that boat, the message here today is you're so loved, you're important, and your story can change lives. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to be around. Would love to hang out, talk, get to know you. The very last thing I'll say is this. When I was really going through some of the worst PTSD and depression, I actually pulled up to Zarinsky Lake and just like sort of wondered, which it's a pretty shallow lake anyway, but just sort of wondered like how bad it would hurt to drive into Zarinsky Lake. And just this last week, I go to my daughter's first dance class, and we're singing Frozen songs. And there's nothing better than being alive. And there's nothing better than knowing that our Lord and Savior knows the amount of hairs on our head. And he has this plan for us that no matter how bad it gets, this is exactly his plan. And if we use it to trust him and to build a life for others, that's when life to me gets really fun. So thank you so much for having me. It's really been a big honor for me.
One more time for Kyler. Thank you very much, Kyler. We appreciate it. Very inspiring, and that's the kind of hope we need. We need to hear those things. So thank you for that, Kyler. So in the way of some logistics, we're going to take a break, and we'll dismiss you from this room. You're free to head to the gym where we've got our organizations and our info booths available, also in the lobby. So please take some time, and before you leave, write down that question on that note card that you got as you came in, and please hand that in the back as you exit the sanctuary. We'll collect those, and then we'll meet back in this room about 10:30. So you have about a half hour to get some coffee, get some refreshments, have some conversation, and check out the info booths in the gym. Have conversation with each other, and we'll meet back here at 10:30. Okay? Enjoy. Okay, everyone, welcome back. Did everyone enjoy some time in the gym and some treats and coffee and conversation? Great. We're glad that you had that. And so now we're going to move into this second session for the morning, and we're pleased to welcome our panelists who are going to have some great responses to some questions and some things to share with you. So specifically, we're going to start today. I'll introduce each of them individually here, but again, we've collected some questions from you over the break. We've also got some specific questions for each of our panelists today, and the point is to help you understand, what should you expect? What could you expect as you reach out for help regarding mental health, which each of these folks, and they represent kind of a different paradigm within the scope of mental wellness. So there's some overlap, but there's also some very specific things that each of them will be able to share. So I'll introduce our panelists first, and then we'll get going. So first we have Sergeant Mandy Peth from the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. Sergeant, let's hear it for her. All right. So Sergeant Peth is an experienced law enforcement officer, handles a wide variety of situations, and she can tell us about how she approaches a call for help when she knows that it involves some aspect of mental health. We also have Lisa Richardson. There is Lisa. Thank you for being here, Lisa. Lisa is a licensed independent mental health practitioner who works at Emmanuel Hospital as an emergency room therapist. And so if you've ever wondered what happens when if someone is in need of mental health assistance in the ER, Lisa can explain her process for making those kind of evaluations. We also have Abby Jones. Let's welcome Abby. Abby is also a licensed independent mental health practitioner, and she is the founder of Pieces of Me, which is a private therapy practice firm. And if you've never set up an appointment with a therapist or for therapy, then you wonder, what does a therapy session entail? Abby can speak to that. We also have Kirsten Egger, who is with us today. There's Kirsten. Kirsten is Associate Director of the Wellness and Community Engagement at the Wellbeing Initiative. She's a national board certified health and wellness coach, a registered yoga coach, and an educator who, among other things, trains people to become peer support specialists. And so Kirsten can explain how to find and use peer support specialists in our community. Then we have Kirk McCormick. Let's welcome Kirk. Kirk is a longtime support group leader for two organizations in Omaha. One is NAMI Nebraska. NAMI stands for National Alliance on Mental Illness, and that's one of the nation's largest mental health organizations. And the other organization is DBSA, and that stands for Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance. And Kirk can share about the format of a support group meeting and what happens when you walk into that environment for the first time. So once again, let's welcome all of our panelists today. Hooray! Okay, so again, the first question we want to ask each of you to respond to is this. So what happens if I reach out to you specifically for help? So let's first start with Sergeant Peth. So let's say someone's facing a mental health crisis themselves or someone they love. They call 911. When should they call 911 or 988, and what should they expect when they do make that call?
All right. Thank you all for being here. I certainly appreciate everybody coming out to get this information. There are two numbers that we recommend that we push out to everybody for a mental health crisis, obviously 911 and 988. I will start with 911. If we are in a true crisis where somebody is in immediate danger, 911 is going to be your best bet because we will send out law enforcement, we will send out an ambulance, the fire department. If something is active or there's immediate injuries that need to be assessed. And so when we show up, I purposely wore a full uniform today. This is what we're going to show up in. It is going to be in a full uniform. And we have certain individuals on our agencies that are trained specifically for crisis intervention. And we try to get some of those specific individuals out for these calls specifically because they just have a little bit of extra training and education. But as soon as we get on scene, we're going to assess, again, the immediate safety needs of everybody there. That includes the individual in crisis, but also those in the immediate area or living with that individual, depending on where we're at. If we do determine that somebody is a danger to themselves or others, and we have evidence to suggest that there is a mental health component, typically that call will end in what we call an EPC, or an emergency protective custody, which is where we will, I don't want to say hook somebody up, but we will take somebody into custody and force them to the hospital so that they can get an evaluation. And that, again, it's not, that's not something that we take lightly. We understand that we are still taking away somebody else's freedom, their freedom for decisions, their freedom to go home, time away from their family. We only do that in situations where we're truly just trying to preserve life and the well-being of the individual and or those around them. The other number that we like to share with everybody is 988, which is a national crisis line. Sometimes folks are experiencing and they're thinking about suicide or self-harm. They're just having some struggles. 988 is a great number to call. They have a plethora of resources and can get folks connected with other resources in our community without having to call in law enforcement. And I know that when I show up on scene, truly I want to show empathy and care for folks. But sometimes I'm only 5'1", so I'm not necessarily super intimidating. But when the guy shows up wearing the same uniform and he's 6'4", and has a deep voice, he's a little bit more intimidating. And the last thing we need in the middle of crisis is just some more emotion and anxiety. And so the benefit of 988 is sometimes you just don't need law enforcement, but you need some other resources. So if you call those folks, they can send out like a crisis response team from local agencies, and it doesn't have to involve law enforcement. And as much as we're there to help, we also recognize that we bring a little bit of anxiety to the table. So I would recommend highly calling 988 if there's not an immediate concern for danger or safety. But certainly if you call 988 and they determine that law enforcement is needed, they will send that call to our dispatch and then law enforcement will come out. But also if you call 911 and they determine that there may not be a need for law enforcement at this point, we're just having conversations, they can also push that call over to our 988 line.
Okay, great, thank you, Sergeant Peth. Okay, so Abby, let's go to you next. So if someone's thinking about therapy, but they're not sure what a therapy session would look like, what can they expect when they call or want to set up a therapy session with you?
Well, that's a pretty complicated question, but I think the first thing that a lot of people see as the primary issue is figuring out insurance first. And so for our clinic specifically and a lot of other clinics that you'll find around town, they ask that you kind of do an inquiry where you submit what maybe the issues are that you want to have addressed so that you can find the right provider, so the provider that matches those issues. Kind of like Kyler talked about in the first speech, if you are looking for EMDR specifically, you need a therapist that's trained in that. Not every single therapist can provide that type of therapy for you. Or if you are looking for a different type of trauma therapy or something that's related to a mood disorder. So that's the first thing, is to kind of give that prompt about what you're looking for so that the therapist can match with you. And also what insurance you might be using if you're trying to use your insurance benefits for therapy. The last thing that causes the most stress for people is finding out that their insurance doesn't cover their session that they just had with the therapist. And whether you make a connection with them or you don't, now you're stuck between a rock and a hard place trying to decide, can I afford this, or do I have to switch to a therapist that my insurance does cover? So those are some of the first things that we try to really work through in outpatient therapy before you get started, all through that inquiry process. And then depending on where you're trying to connect with that outpatient therapist, there may be a wait list, unfortunately. And so figuring out what the timelines look like and then trying to really find the therapist that you connect with. I always tell people that therapy or finding a therapist is kind of like dating a little bit. You have to search around. Yeah. You have to search around and try to find the one that matches your needs and also that you can have a personal relationship with. You're talking about very difficult things, very vulnerable things that are really, really hard to kind of get to and address. And if you don't have a relationship with that person or feel like it's a good connection, the therapy is probably not going to be very great. And it's okay. I tell people all the time, if you don't feel like you have a connection with that person, it's okay to find another therapist because they're probably feeling it too. And then it becomes an awkward elephant in the room, right? And so that dating process is really frustrating for people, trying to find the right fit, making sure that your insurance carrier is covering it, all of that. And so that's one of the biggest hurdles in outpatient therapy when you're trying to get that all set up. But we at Pieces of Me and other clinics try to address that up front so that it doesn't become a lingering issue, and that way you can get connected with the people you need and make sure that everything runs smoothly from there. So then after all of the headache of trying to get it set up, you actually get to your first session and you meet with someone, and we call that the initial evaluation. So it's another really awkward appointment where they're going to ask you about 100 different questions that they're mandated to ask you because of insurance, right? All basic get-to-know-you questions, kind of gather some personal history, and really get to the bottom of, like, what are our goals here, and what do you want to work on in therapy? So that gets you through the first session, and you're not really going to have an understanding of what therapy looks like until a few sessions later. So the average amount of times that people go to therapy is one session, and it's not really a good outlook on it because that first session is all just a bunch of questions. It's not the actual therapy part. So I always encourage people to go back for the second one because that's where you actually get to kind of some meat and potatoes and to have a natural conversation with somebody to see if it's going to work or not. And then from there, you kind of decide if it's worth it or working for you. So that at least gets you started. And then I know Kyler also mentioned in his talk that he went for twice a week for a certain amount of months, right? That really depends on what modality you're working in or what technique you're working in with your therapist. So with EMDR, they might recommend that twice a week. And it also depends on the severity of the issues that you're experiencing. So a lot of times, again, unfortunately, insurance companies run the show for us. They won't pay for that or cover that, and so we try once a week or every other week, and it really depends on what your needs are and how we can meet that. So everything is very individualized. It's hard to kind of pinpoint exactly what it might look like for you specifically without going through those initial phases. But then it kind of ebbs and flows from there just based on your need in outpatient.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Abby. Okay, so Lisa, somebody's in a mental health crisis and they're seeking some immediate help and they go to the hospital emergency department. What can they expect when they go there, or if you take a loved one to the ER?
Well, I hope that if I reach out to one person or you reach out to somebody today and you can get them up to a manual to the ER, I've done a good job today. So that's my goal, is to help somebody or some people in this room today, because going to the hospital can be a scary thing, and there's still, unfortunately, such a stigma attached to mental health. And I have people weekly ask me, about shock treatments and, like from the 40s and the old days. And so I have to break a lot of those stigmas. I see people shaking their heads. They know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not like that anymore. This is 2026, and we've come a long way. Just a little bit about myself. I started working in mental health when I was 15 years old. My very first job was working in an all-male place where people were put for being crazy. I don't like that word. I don't use that word anymore, but that's what it was when I was 15. I went to school. I was going to be a nurse and help everybody in mental health. So I got my bachelor's in nursing, decided, well, that wasn't giving me what I wanted. So I went on ahead and got my master's in mental health therapy. So I kind of have both worlds now. I'm in an ER working with mental health, and so I can walk the walk, but I can't talk the talk for nursing, but I do know all the drugs and I know all the things like that, so I have the best of everything. The number one thing I'm going to tell you when you bring your loved one in, or if you come in, thank God you're here. Thank God you're here. You're safe. We're going to make sure you're safe, and we're not going to let you out of here until we know you're safe, and you can look me in the eye and tell me that you don't want to harm yourself or anyone else. We're going to ask you a lot of questions, a lot of personal questions. And I will always ask people, would you mind leaving the room so I could talk to, your loved one? And if they say, no, I want them here, that's fine. But a lot of times people will not be honest with me if there's somebody else in the room with them, because they can't tell me what they want me to know about, because they might hurt that person, especially if it's a parent. 19 is the legal age in Nebraska, so unfortunately, you have to be older than that in order to be able to tell me things that can't talk to your parents about. We used to have a child adolescent unit at Emmanuel, but they closed that down now because of Children's opening their new children's facility. We still see children, but we have to take them by ambulance somewhere else once they come in. But we do see adults, and we see seniors. I want everybody to know that. We have a floor specifically for our senior population that goes through things. Seniors, they lose their spouses, they lose their homes, their kids put them in homes, they take their cars away from them. I mean, there's so much mental health, mental illness with our older population, and so we have an entire floor dedicated just to them. Then we have our fourth floor where we have our less acute people that stay 3 to 5 days, and then we have our very, very sick intensive care unit where we have people that are very, very sick. But when you come into the ER, you're going to be assessed. Right away, you're going to be assessed by myself and a provider, and collectively, there's a team that will decide what's best for you. And whether it be outpatient, whether it be me sending a referral to Abby here, whether it be, we have a lot of things that we can do to help. Therapy, medications, a lot of people that come to see us were on their medications, but they felt so good, they stopped taking them. They're right back where they started from. Because what most people don't realize is once you stop taking those medications, you're gonna go right back to where you started from. Your mental issues are gonna come back. So it's very important to stay on the medications. A huge number of people that we see are people that have stopped taking their medications or they can't afford them anymore. And a lot of these tables and people out here can help with things like that. But the most important thing is I tell everybody, thank you so much for having the courage and the strength to come here today. Thank you so much for being here. We are here to help you. I am here to help you. If I have to sit here for an hour and talk with you, I will. A lot of people in the news, we see a lot of people that we see a lot of people that have lost loved ones or who I'm working with. Their best friend just shot themselves and they had no idea. It was their best friend and they had no idea. But Emmanuel is here to help you. We are 100% here to help you. We will make sure you're safe. We'll do a mental health exam, a status exam on you to see what's going on. I will dig and dig and dig. I'll dig deeper than anybody's ever dug with you to find out what's going on. And I'll make sure that you're going to get the help that you need. So I know it seems scary, and like she was talking down here about an EPC, that's just a temporary hold, 72 hours, so that we make sure that you're safe during that time. Apparently something happened that the police thought you needed to be held for a little while, so that's what we're going to do. We also have what's called a Board of Mental Health. I don't know if many of you know about that, but if somebody's in danger to themselves or someone else, and you just don't know what to do, and I mean, they're very, very sick, and this is a whole nother ballgame, the Board of Mental Health, that's like a last resort, but we do have that. That's something else that we can do. But I just want everybody to know that even though the hospital may seem scary, we're there to help, and we have an entire psychiatric staff that's going to help you. So I'll be happy to answer any questions today that you may have.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Okay, Kirsten, so you represent kind of something newer, peer support specialist. So tell us how we would become engaged with a peer support specialist and what to expect if we were meeting with peer support specialists.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, first. This on? Okay, cool. Well, first, I want to thank you and acknowledge this space and all the organizers here for putting this on. It's really important and really beautiful. It makes me feely seeing all these people here. It's so important. I am 1,000% certain that everyone in here, if we haven't experienced a mental health crisis on our own, we have a loved one that has. So to give away your Saturday morning on this like beautiful summer day to come out and to be here is so cool to see. And to you, Pastor Mike and Lori, for asking me to come out here, and all of the organizers here, you're phenomenal, and this is really cool. Really, really cool to be a part of and to sit here with this crew. And I want to ask before digging in, is there anyone who doesn't know what a peer support specialist is? It's okay if you don't. Okay, a couple hands. So just very briefly, and that's okay, I didn't know either, really technically what a peer support specialist was until I started working in this field 5 years ago. Before then, I was in the field of education for the 16 years prior to that. So peer support specialist is somebody with personal lived experience walking a path of recovery who supports other folks along their path of recovery. And a really cool element, one of the really cool elements about peer support is the path of recovery in peer support is really broad and inclusive. So a lot of times people think of initially with recovery of substance use, and that is most definitely a part of the recovery that we refer to, but it is also equally and very much mental health. So folks experiencing challenges with mental health, also with physical health, or being a person supporting someone on any of those paths. I am one of the lucky ones who has challenges in all the areas. So have benefited from, peer support in all of those realms. Want to state quickly, I would be remiss to not talk about this briefly, that we are definitely in the business of, in peer support, destigmatizing mental health, which everyone here, including Kyler and all of us here, really strive to do, to normalize, as our speaker earlier talked about, it's okay to not be okay, and normalizing talking about it. I was speaking to, I'm forgetting her name, and I don't see her in here. Was it Angie, blonde hair, one of the organizers? How just the work that you're doing here as a faith community to normalize being there for each other when yourself or a loved one is going through a mental health crisis, in the same way that you would when someone is physically ill or going through a cancer treatment. That's someone we rally around each other. We set up meal trains. We ask what we can do for you. We show up at your house, walk your dog, help you clean your house. In the same way, we do that for mental health. So we are very much in that business. And for anyone in here, I know at least Lori has gone through our training at the Wellbeing Initiative where I work. We don't really use the word help, and that's not that we don't acknowledge that's really important for folks to be able to ask for help. It really has to do with the mutuality of peer support. So in peer support, we really see more of we're here to help you as we're here to walk beside you. We have been through maybe not specifically what you've been through, because all of our stories are individualized and really unique, but we know what it's like to walk through a hard time in life and to make it through and to find the really individualized sort of supports that we need, whether that be hospitalization, therapy, long-term treatment, 12-step programs, other amazing faith-based programs and tools in the community. So that's really what we want to emphasize. The other piece too that's really beautiful about peer support is it partners
wonderfully with other elements and other tools. So we have peer support specialists that ride out with officers and get to support officers in the community and work closely with therapists. I love my therapist, and it is like dating initially. And I know that, and really, Lisa spoke about the team, and I have experienced a team of people around me in my life from the first time I went to treatment when I was 19 for substance use and mental health, and since then, over the years, the importance of having a team. And a peer support specialist really sees and values the importance of working together with all the people in all of our lives and the folks that we get to walk beside and support. So, and the practicality of it, when you first reach out to us, we have somebody come and meet you or your loved one, and of course, there's a little bit of paperwork, a little bit of intake that we'll do with you, and then we just get to know you. And that's like one of the biggest. It's really about the relationship and building that connection. So we start right away with just getting to know your story and what brought you to this place and creating that warm and safe environment.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Kirsten, that's great. So Kirk, you have been facilitating support group meetings for a long time, and so you know kind of the challenge of somebody walking into that environment for the first time and wondering, what they're going to say or what they will hear. And so talk about what to expect if you walk into a support group for the first time, what to expect there.
Sure. So I've been doing this for 11 years, and I have the luxury of doing a support group with NAMI on Tuesday nights and then DBSA on Thursday nights. When I first went, because my therapist at the time, she told me about, I think these groups would help you out, because there's so few groups out there in Omaha at the time. And I remember I put my hat so low that you couldn't even see my eyes, because my first thought was, I'm embarrassed, I'm afraid that I might meet someone, and also, what the media shows, back in the old days, where like one flew over the cuckoo's nest and things of that nature, where you just assume everyone is going to be like that, and so it intimidates you. But I can tell you, the greatest group of people I have ever met. They're warm, they're compassionate, and that's the great thing about it is we all have a lived experience. So we're all at the exact same playing field, and we can relate to one another. And that's how I ended up being a facilitator. Don't have the credentials you guys have, but it's the best volunteer job I've ever had, where I get to meet people and hear their stories. But our groups are very relaxed. So we'll either break up into small groups individually or not individually, but maybe in 5 or 6 or more. And we just go around the room and we talk about what's going on in your daily lives that deal with mental health. You can go back. We try not to go back way back when. That's with the clinician. But if that's rearing its ugly head, please talk about that now. It's an open forum, so there's nothing stupid you're going to say. There's nothing that we haven't heard. And if there's something that we feel that we could help advise and give them some techniques that have worked for us, we do that. We never tell anyone what to do. And as far as if someone does come, they do not have to speak, because that's intimidating. Like Kyler was saying, if someone has a broken arm, they're in a cast, you know what's going on. But with mental health, you do not know what's going on in their brain. And I think that's where pride, ego, those things kind of rear their ugly heads, where we feel that we're the only ones that have a mental illness. And that's the thing that just always amazes me, that somehow our brains tell us no one can possibly understand what we're going through. And that's the great thing about these groups. You're going to find that there's so many people out there that might not have your mood disorder. It might be something completely different, but that's where empathy comes in. That's where you can understand what they're going through, their story. So it's a collective group of people that are there just to help one another. I couldn't be more proud of these groups. And I was talking with Larry and Deb at No Shame, and we talked about like the payoff, if you will. And when you see someone come in there, and again, that's the other thing. If you see someone come to group, we might be the first line of defense, meaning they've never talked to anyone in their entire lives about what's going on. I mean, they might be suicidal right then and there. And of course, we'll, get them to the appropriate place they need to be. But a lot of times, people just want to get something off their chest because they might have had that for so many years. They bottle that up, and they just have to have a release of some sort. So these groups check the boxes and all those things. And we do cool things outside a group. So we have a nice little community here. And going back to like No Shame, where Larry said the great thing about that is you see someone, and then maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, could be next week, and you can see them smile. You see kind of they kind of light up, and they kind of feel like they have a new lease on life. And that's just a wonderful thing. So No Shame Ministries is also an incredible support group that I hope you guys could get to learn and participate with them. So very honored to be here. Thank you so much for doing this. Laura, you did an amazing job. You kick butt. Thank you so much for doing what you did. And thank you all for showing up. And also thanks for some of our DBSA family from coming here. It's confidential, so I can't really point them out. And that's the other thing great about these groups is what is said here stays here. So you never have to worry about someone telling your story outside of those walls. And that's very imperative because we need this to be a safe environment so people keep coming back. And at the end of the day, we all want to live, and life is so precious. So thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you, Kurt. Okay, so round 2, I've got a question for each of you again, and so just take a couple of minutes to respond to this. This one's for Sergeant Peth. So how often is mental health a factor in the calls that you respond to?
That's a loaded question. I think it traditionally or typically it's plays a small role in a lot of the calls that were going on. Granted, if we show up to a car accident, obviously we're going to deal with the immediate just physical needs. But when we're getting other calls for service throughout the day, a lot of times when there's not a criminal element, it's an indication that somebody is just at their capacity and they don't have the resources present to make decisions or to know what to do next. So I would say it's very prevalent in a lot of our calls. And even on those calls where we are seeing elements of a crime, there's a theft, fraud, burglaries, stuff like that. Either now the victim is probably being thrown into a new world where all of a sudden I have anxiety, I feel unsafe, is it okay for me to be home? Is somebody gonna violate my space and my safety again? Or we're seeing those crimes being driven by some unmet mental health needs and basic needs, which, as we all know, will evolve to mental health issues. So I don't know that I can give a true indication or a good answer to that, but to say that especially in today's day and age where we don't get to turn things off, you don't get to go home at the end of the day and just completely disconnect. I think as Kyler was saying earlier, everybody is on that social media all the time, or we have cell phones and there's this expectation that if somebody calls or texts you, you have to get right back to them. And so we're not practicing that self-care. We're not getting the opportunity to check out and just take a breather. And all of that can just lead to an overstimulation for our brains and for our bodies. And so we are seeing more and more calls for non-criminal issues that really come back to that mental health component. But again, I want to encourage everybody, if you're there or your loved one is there, please still call because we don't always end up taking people away in a police car. But we will absolutely do what we can to connect you with the right services and resources in the community.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, so Abby, this one's for you. So as a therapist, what beliefs about mental health help guide you in your practice as you try to help others with mental health issues?
Well, first off, everyone has mental health.
Right.
It may not be a mental illness, right? So we all have a duty to take care of ourselves and our mental health and our well-being, regardless of the severity of it. So there are people who come to therapy just to have a place to vent and feel supported. There might not be some of these bigger issues that we're talking about today as far as, suicidality, PTSD, trauma, any of those things where you just might need support, and that's okay too. So I meet everyone where they're at, and I know that everyone has mental health, regardless of what the severity or what the issues might be. And so coming at that from a very blank slate and knowing that everyone has their own story, everyone has all these different experiences that they've been through, and just trying to understand that with zero judgment. Ultimately, that's kind of where you start, where I start at least.
Great, that's great. Okay, Lisa, so here's one. When should I take a loved one to the emergency room?
That's a good one. First of all, anybody in here Warden June Cleaver? Anybody? Perfect family, perfect parents, perfect children, right? It doesn't exist. Sorry, everyone in this room, including our whole panel here, has junk in the trunk, okay? We all have it. Some of us don't want to admit it because we're embarrassed. Oh, my dad's an alcoholic. Oh. I mean, it's okay. When Abby was talking about mental health versus mental illness, if our mental health is not good, we can't do our job. We can't take care of our children. We can't do anything if our mental health is not good. We see Abby to work on that, okay? So if you haven't worked on it and that junk in your trunk from your childhood is still sitting in there, eventually you're gonna come see me, because it's gonna get to a point where you're fetal position in bed every day, so depressed you can't even take a shower. So, to answer the question, you come to the hospital for whatever, if you aren't feeling in your gut, if you're feeling something's not right, come to the hospital. We would rather you come there and let us discharge you with whatever we think than have you stay home with that person and not get the help. We absolutely want you to come to the hospital. And to answer her question, we have police bring people in at least 3 to 4 times a day. Now, there's calls they go on that they can take care of, without coming to the hospital, but the police are always bringing people to the hospital. There are people that are very sick, and I mean, just very sick, not just depressed or, fighting, but they're fighting demons and they're fighting all kinds of things from their Warden June Cleaver household when they were growing up. So we need you to come in, whatever your gut says. And if you want to call 988, 988 is open 24/7 every day of the year, Christmas Day, Easter, and you can talk to them. And if you live by yourself and don't have a car, they will send somebody for you to bring you to Emmanuel. They will do whatever they have to do to help you. So if you're too embarrassed to come to the hospital or whatever, call 988 and let them tell you to come, and they'll get you to us. But there's no rules in life, really, about anything. I mean, I love people that say, my sister just died and my mom told me I need to stop crying. Oh, what book does that say that in? I want to read that. I tell people this on a daily basis. What book did you read that in? I'd like to see that rule. So again, there's no rules on this answer either. It's your gut, and it's you know yourself better than I do. You know your family better than we do. If they're not acting normal like they were last week, what's normal? I shouldn't say that. If they're not acting like they were a week ago, bring them in. Let's see if we can help them.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Okay, Kirsten, so here's a question for you. What is the role of community in promoting mental health?
Oh man, it is a huge role, one of the primary roles. That is a really great question. What is the role of community? I love that already at this point of this event, this event is about community, right? So it starts from those sorts of conversations, and such a big part of what we're doing here, the destigmatization and learning about different resources from each other, what sorts of things are available, because it's not one size fits all. We need to be able to find what works for us and guide our loved ones and friends and other aspects of community to places that we might think work for them. We know that, as Kyler talked about too, there is a literal epidemic of loneliness. So this is something that has been studied and researched, and there's actually there's a phenomenal report that I believe 2 years ago, that is fascinating, that this disconnection that we have from each other is actually as detrimental to our health as smoking a pack of cigarettes for years. It's really wild how serious it can be. So the need is dire. It is incredibly important for us to be doing things like this as much as we can, whether it be in bigger rooms like this, or in coffee shops, or community centers, or in the hospital. That's just building community is one of the most important elements of what we can do. We really believe in peer support, that we recover in community, that none of us, we're a species that need each other. We really do, and there's phenomenal, science in that as well, that we truly need one another, and we most definitely need each other when we're going through the stuff, so building those spaces is incredibly important. And at Wellbeing Initiative, that's a huge piece of what we do. If you're in Lincoln, we have a center there where we hold groups throughout the week, all different sorts of groups that we have, from rap groups, which is not a hip hop group, it stands for Wellness Recovery Action Plan, and Smart Recovery, other 12-step groups. That's yoga. If you ever want to come and join me for yoga, I would love to have you. In Omaha, we've got one of our guys up here, Neil, as a stellar human. I know some of you in here know him, and is out here doing all sorts of phenomenal work with organizations and individuals. There's a group that meets up here once a week. There's information at our table out there. So building communities of recovery, normalizing conversations like this, supporting each other when we need it, and continuing to do whatever we can to kind of spiral that out, the more that we can, is incredibly, incredibly important to this conversation.
That's great. Thank you, Kirsten. So Kirk, talk about this. What have you seen happen in a peer support group for people that has helped them along in their path of recovery? What have you seen happen in people's lives by being a part of a peer support group?
Yeah, absolutely. What you said about smoking, that's so true. It's actually 15 cigarettes a day. So we have a lot of smokers out there. 1 in 6 people deal with loneliness. So it is an epidemic, and by 2050, 1 in 2 people will have a mental illness. So it's 4.5 billion people around the globe. Went on a tangent. What was that question again? Oh, as far as how it helps people out? My God, there's so many stories.
You got it.
So many stories that we have. We have people that they get married, they get a great job, they're actually happy, they look in the mirror and they actually love who they see. It's phenomenal. They want to get involved, they want to help other people out. It's just phenomenal when you see someone at their lowest. And again, people that come to these groups, you're meeting them at their lowest at some point in their lives. And just seeing them smile. It might even be a week later. It just makes you so happy. You know, and the one thing we always hear is, I didn't know there was groups out there like this. You always hear that when it comes to mental health. You know, they think they don't exist. And now, which is phenomenal, we're seeing more men come to these groups, which is phenomenal that we're seeing these guys have the courage to come here. Because obviously there's a disconnect, because when it comes to suicide rate, more men take their lives than women. So, you know, it's like, how do we not see what's going on right in front of us? So yeah, it's just phenomenal. I can't be happy enough.
That's great. Okay, so we have a few minutes. I want to get to some questions that were submitted. So I think this one, there's not to a specific person, so anyone who feels like you can speak to this, just go ahead. So this one came up. How does LGBTQIA issues affect kids and adults in regard to mental health?
I can take some of this. So, I mean, what I think of right away is we know that, and it said youth, did it say?
Yes.
Yes, youth specifically. So we know that youth that identify as a part of the LGBTQIA plus community experience greater rates of mental health challenges and greater concern for that suicidal ideation or thinking, that feeling of isolation from communities of all kinds, from whether that be in school or in churches, or just, you know, out there in the world, the sort of messaging that youth hear. So whoever asked this question, thank you. This is a really important conversation to have, because we know that there is risk, and when there is an increase of risk for youth in that community. So an increased need for compassion, for understanding, for community wrapping around them and making sure that they feel seen and valued. And that is something that at the Wellbeing Initiative we have a training that another one of our staff here facilitates that training around how to be an ally to people, and it does specifically talk about youth as well. So that is what comes up for me, is just awareness that there is a great need for an increase of compassion, which I am certain this is a space that wants to know how to do more of that. So, okay. Yeah.
I'd like to add to that. I have worked with, is it on? Mm-hmm. I have worked with the, at Emmanuel, we had a psychiatrist who worked with the LGBTQIA plus community, and actually there was a clinic. He had a clinic at Emmanuel. And he decided to move to Fremont, and he is now up in the Methodist system in Fremont. He specializes in transgender surgeries, in working with the communities. And if anybody in this room wants his name and number in his clinic, see me afterwards, and I will make sure that you get that information, because that's a very, very important thing, and I can help you with that. Good question.
Yeah, great. Okay. So another question, this can be for anyone to respond to. What does bullying do in the context of mental health, and what can we do to eliminate bullying?
It infuriates me.
This is probably one of my biggest pet peeves, so I'll go ahead and answer some of this question. Bullying is just like this silent killer of mental health. I feel like these kids and adults, it can happen in a workplace too. I don't want to disclude adults from this, but the kids often tell me that they don't feel like anyone at school is going to do anything about it, and so they sit in it all day long. And then they get anxious to go to school because they know it's going to happen. And so then we run into truancy issues, and they start to get in trouble. And then other people get involved, or law enforcement gets involved because they're not going to school, and nobody's understanding what the root cause is. And then these kids end up telling someone, whether it be a therapist or a parent or a teacher, whomever they trust or find as a safe place, that, well, I've been bullied for X amount of time or X amount of years, and nobody knew about it. Or they told someone once and nobody did anything about it, and so they continue to just live with that. And they continue to go to school because that's what they're supposed to do, right? And nobody's addressing these issues. And so it's a big issue, and unfortunately, as a therapist from the outside world, right? Like, I'm not in a school. Kids come to see me if they're coming to see me. I don't have a lot of control over fixing that problem other than really sitting with a kid or adult, whomever it might be, and saying, like, one, you're not alone, and this isn't okay. But how do we work around that? Who can we talk to? Who do you think is a safe place to address this at school? And it works some of the time. Not all of the time, you know, and I'll be the first one to call out that I say most school districts have a zero tolerance policy on bullying, but I don't know that the implementation is great.
Yeah, most of the people that wind up at Emmanuel that want to die because they can't take it one more day, to be super honest with you, the parents didn't know that they could call the school. They could call that principal and they could say, hey, listen, my kid's being bullied. And the kid keeps it quiet and takes the bullying in fear of retaliation. So that's when I step in and I say, Mom, or Dad, here's what you're gonna do today when you leave. This is the number you're gonna call, and this is what you're gonna tell the school. This is what's happening to your child, and something has to be done today. And I've even picked up the phone and said, with your permission, I have no problem calling the school right now and telling them what's going on. And I would do it in a heartbeat. I see so much bullying in the ER at Emmanuel, I can't even tell you. I can almost predict the age group that comes in. They want to die because of the bullying, and it just infuriates me. And Abby's right. I can't tell you how many of them say, the teachers turn their head. They don't want to deal with it. And then I hear some of the school districts where, well, they have so much money that they get lawyers and they come up and they threaten the school and the school's scared of them. And I'm like, oh, it's just, I mean, I don't know if you hear that kind of stuff, but oh my God. Yeah, I get really mad, and hopefully I can help the parents to make the proper phone calls and do the things that they need to do to help their children. But like Abby said, it's tough. I don't know, but I know all I can tell you is what I hear from my people that come and see me. Maybe Abby would know that, but the school administrations have their policies, and they're not allowed to tell me anything. It's against the rules for us to know, well, there's two sides to every story, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so all I know is I work with the parents, and I mean, I will write it out for them. I'll do whatever I have to do to help these families deal with it. Because when Abby gets to a point where she, you know, can't do any more and they have to come to the ER because they're not sleeping, they're not eating, they're crying all the time, they make up excuses. I have a stomach ache, and the parents are like, we don't know what's going on. Well, then I make the parents leave the room. Or I don't make them, I ask them, would you mind if I talk to Bobby by myself, little 10, 11-year-old? Sure. What's going on? What's going on? Why are you having these stomach aches every day? Why don't you want to go to school? And I'm safe. This is a safe place. You can tell me anything. Well, I got beat up again yesterday, and they're tripping me, and I just can't go to school anymore. It's bad. Mom knew nothing about it. So, yeah, I'll go to bat.
Can I speak to that just briefly?
Sure.
So that's an awesome question, and that's in working in education for many years and with administrators and teachers and social workers in the school system and different teams of people, therapists. That is the answer, which sucks to so many questions, it depends on the person. So is it tough to get administrations to take action, I think that is what you asked. And sometimes it can be, and that I wanted to speak just
briefly, because anyone in this room can be an advocate for the youth and for the family who might have a student in that system, because I know this conversation is kind of tilted towards youth because that's so much where we see the bullying happen. So I was such a huge advocate for that. When I would work with parents in that capacity, I would actually say, be annoying. Annoy them. Like that is annoy, and go into the office and be incessant about advocating for your kids, sending emails to the teachers, and not giving up there, with superintendent even. Yes, Lisa, yes, to get it to the top. Very much so. And what Abby was speaking to as well, I think of every behavior is communication. So when we're seeing the kids, with that going on, and really it comes down to me again for that compassionate connection, like that instead of judging what might be going on with this kiddo, seeking to understand what's going on with them and having that conversation. But in terms of the administration, just be incessant with your communication and showing up for whoever you're concerned for.
Okay, last question before we break. This one can be for anyone if you feel like you want to respond. How can fear turn to courage or hope? Go for it, Abby.
She just knows. No, I'm kidding. Fear has a way to just take over your life, and you have to choose whether you're going to allow it to, or if you are going to turn into that infamous or famous photo of the lion, right? You can harness that fear, and you can use it for motivation. There's nothing that says that you can't tackle every fear that you have, except yourself and your mind. Kyler's speech earlier, he talked about like kids are what we tell them they can be. And regardless of what you've been told previously in your life, that's where therapy comes in, and we start to really reshape a lot of those thoughts and those beliefs and those patterns, and we want to turn that fear into a motivator. It's your thoughts or whomever has previously told you that before that no longer should take hold over your life that's limiting you at that point. And so I think you can do that with a lot of different emotions, right? Like we talk about that with anxiety. If you're anxious about something, you can also, anxiety and excitement are on the same wavelength, right? So if you turn the anxiety, the more negative side of that emotion, into excitement, that's a way to really kind of change things around. You can do that with fear. We call that opposite emotion, if any of you DBTers are out there. So there's a lot of ways that you can harness that, but you need someone in your corner to support you to be able to do it.
And I know when I'm talking with somebody in the ER and they're fearful of something, and I feel like a lot of our, the way we are is learned behavior. Our behaviors are learned. We come out as a blank slate, and then people raise us and teach us things, right or wrong, and then we become adults, and we have to figure out how to unprogram what was told or how that fear was put into us, that for whatever reason. And like Abby gets people every week, I only get them for an hour, and so I got to be quick on what I say, and so I just want people to know that, you need to go see a therapist so that that therapist can work with you on, unprogramming what you think is right that isn't. It's not okay for, dad to come in your room every night. That's not okay. These types of things that you have to be unprogrammed. And that's where she comes in, but I just don't have the time I only get to see people once for an hour, and unfortunately, we all have learned things. I think sometimes fear's just learned from whatever. You'll never swim. Oh, don't swim, you'll drown. Oh, okay, so you won't ever get in the water. You're scared. You're fearful of that. Well, that's not true. So.
Okay. Anybody else want to respond to that?
A little something.
Okay.
So what I thought of lovely answers that's here, and the other piece that I think of is that it's okay to be afraid. Like it's That's a natural part of being human, and especially at that point where we're ready to seek help or support and take that step, whether it be for ourselves or seeking support for a loved one, that can be scary. And it takes a lot of courage to state that you need that and to take that first step, to pick up the phone call, to walk in the door, to let someone know what's going on. And by doing that and walking through that fear with courage and sharing that with each other, that's where the hope comes. Like that is, we know that, okay, if this person understands and I believe them and I've built that relationship, then maybe I can recover from this too. Maybe I can heal from this too. Maybe there's hope for me on this path as well. Yeah.
Okay, that's great responses to that. I want to say a great big thank you to all 5 of you for joining us today. Let's thank our panelists today. Well done. And also for Kyler joining us today. So again, these folks are going to hang around for a little bit, so feel free as we dismiss here for lunch. We're going to head to the gym for that. You're welcome to join us for that and make use of the information tables, our guests, our speakers. Kyler will be here for a little bit. So please continue to ask questions, involve yourselves in conversation because we know that there is hope. And we're glad you all have joined us today here at Hope and for this conference. Thank you all for being here. Let's head to lunch, everybody.